The format for this meeting is a 10-minute speaker. Our secretary's announcements, a coffee and snack break, and then our main speaker. Our first speaker for tonight is Rodney. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Hi, I'm Rodney. I'm an alcoholic.
Hello, Rodney.
Yeah, so I got to say, I completely forgot about this commitment tonight. I was driving to the Chinese takeout to get my food at about 7:10. I was on Avenue G in Redondo Beach, and this thing came in the back of my head. I was like, I'm forgetting something here. So I had to do a quick U-turn, come here and do this. So instead of what I used to do was run out and go to the bar and have a couple of shots and a beer and then go home, I'm now running out to an AA meeting, doing a 10-minute chat, then going home. So times have improved. But so I, as you can hear, I speak English properly, and this is the way that the Queen spoke English back in the 1700s when she sent us all out to Australia as convicts. So I come from a heavy drinking family in a heavy drinking country, right? One of my first memories is of my grandfather, with a oxygen mask over his mouth, completely yellow and jaundiced from, kidney and liver disease, taking up his mask, having a cigarette and asking us to go get drinks for him. And no one even frowned on it. It was just it wasn't a big deal. That's just what happened, and uncles, aunties, everyone just piled around drinking a lot. So it was very difficult for me to get a benchmark as to what was normal, because what I thought was normal actually turns out wasn't really that normal. But I didn't know that really until I got into these rooms, because for my entire adult life I hung out with people that drank and drugged exactly like me, from all of my family to all of my mates and everyone like that, because basically I was too much for people that didn't drink or drug like me, because why would you want to hang out with somebody that was going crazy? So So basically the type of drunk that I am, the flavour of drunk that I am, I'd call myself a periodic oblivion drunk. So what that means is I drink periodically, which is probably 3 or 4 times a week. Basically have Monday or Tuesday off, swear off it forever, and then start to get a bit nervous about Wednesday, might have a couple, and then sort of just have a really long run over the weekend, and then drink to oblivion, drink to blackout. And I drank to blackout pretty much from the very first time I drank, and I didn't worry about it. I always thought I could trust myself on autopilot, which you never can, because you wake up the next morning and you find out what you got up to, and you think, oh God, I can't believe I did that or said that, and those sort of things. But that was the sort of drunk that I was, and I thought I was doing it to be a party boy, to have fun, that it was fun and everyone around me was having fun. And it was that for a long time, but I didn't realise that I was actually, in the end, doing it to just avoid being an adult, to avoid being a grown-up, to avoid all of my problems, avoid, having to deal with mortgage stress or relationship stress or work stress and those sort of things. So everything was just continually just buried up in the living room of my head, and I just didn't deal with anything. Because any time I wasn't working, I was, drinking or smoking copious amounts of weed or doing anything else. I mean, I was a real connoisseur of alcohol. Some people like to pair food with wine. I like to pair, drugs with alcohol. So I think, that cocaine would go really great with that tequila, or, that Xanax would be great with this beer, or, maybe that Molly would be good with the cocaine and the beer and the tequila. And, just go from there and just go for these massive sort of runs. So, I had no real consequence, and every time I drank, it didn't matter. I didn't worry about any consequences. It didn't matter if I had a meeting the next day. It didn't matter if I had an appointment, a family commitment, whatever. Once I had the first drink, I couldn't stop. There was just no stopping me. There was no amount of willpower. There was no amount of, you're just going to have 2 or 3, and I was always, thinking to myself, I'll protect myself when I'll stop on the 6th drink. I didn't realise it was the first drink that I really should have been looking at, but it was always the 10th or whatever, I'll stop there, because I never did. And I used to taking the circus on the road. I wasn't a home drinker. I'd go out, so I'd go to bars and these sort of things like that, and then bars would close, then I'd either get people back to my house or go around to somebody else's place. I just couldn't stop. I couldn't stop until I passed out. And how I got in the rooms was basically I walked out of the lighthouse. So my sobriety date is the 11th of December 2021, so I've got about 19, 20 months, and I walked out of the lighthouse in Hermosa Beach. There was my bicycle had been stolen a couple of weeks before. There was a couple of policemen there chatting up these young girls, and I thought it was appropriate to give them some free policing advice about my stolen bicycle. And I said, I wish you guys, I think it was a little bit harsher than that, but I wish you guys would spend less time picking up chicks and more time catching bicycle thieves. And they said, have you been drinking? I was like, what do you reckon? It's like 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And they said, come over here. And I said, you come over here. And next thing you know, I'm in handcuffs. So I thought they were joking. So I'm in the back in the car, still chatting away, blah, blah, blah. I was like, what, are you arresting me for being a dick now? I didn't realise that was like, and they're like, yeah, we are. And so, yeah, they threw me into the Hermosa Beach jail, which is, that's my first experience of jail, but I mean, it's definitely the Hilton of jails. I mean, I had my own room. I think it was about 2 a.m. when I got me in there. I think I woke up about 10:30, 11. I had a really good 8-9 hours sleep. And I couldn't, when I woke up, I didn't know whether I was allowed out or not, Then I was like, shoo. So I started calling them down, and different policemen who I didn't recognise anyway, so I had memory loss. She said, you were a bit of a handful last night, and then they booked me with public intoxication. And at the time, I was going through citizenship process, and like anything on my record would have been an X to my aspirations to become a US citizen. So I went to a lawyer, and she said, oh, we need to get this diverted ASAP, go to 90 and 90. Which I did. She gave that to the DA, and they dismissed my case and suppressed it. And long story short, I'm a citizen now, but that's all because of AA. But the thing about it is, I would never have got to AA if it wasn't for the Hermosa Beach police guys, because I didn't think I was an alcoholic, and I knew nothing about Alcoholics Anonymous. So the best thing about it was going into the rooms was, I was going to say something controversial now, but I found doing the steps really easy, because I think I may have been ready for it, So I got into the rooms, and after hearing all the similarities, I was like, shit, I am an alcoholic, and my life is unmanageable, and I am powerless. So step 1 I got almost immediately. I was like, wow. It was like being diagnosed with a disease that you didn't know you had, like this terminal disease that you didn't know you had. So it was like such a relief. It was like, shit, okay, all right. Step 2 and 3 were difficult for me. Like I had a real battle with the spiritual side of things. I considered myself spiritual, but it looked like a sort of a low-key sort of Christian recruitment program, and I wasn't sort of going to get into that sort of stuff. And so, I started off calling my higher power Rufus. That was my way in. People were saying, I still call him Rufus, but I also use the God name now as well. But I couldn't say God. I couldn't do the God thing. So I just started praying every day, and something happened. I had a spiritual experience. I had a spiritual awakening after a couple of months, and then I got into the steps. I can't say the steps were fun, but I was really willing to do them, and I was really willing to do them in a really hard, honest way. So steps 4 through 7 to me were the best therapy I've ever had, like just cleansing. I'd never looked at myself in the mirror like that before. Never looked at all of my defects and my side of things that I'd done wrong to people, and how my behaviour had impacted people over the years, and relationships and whatever. Then 8 and 9 to me were just these amazing forgiveness steps. I forgave everybody. I was lucky when I had my amends. Everyone forgave me. I just had the most beautiful step 9 amends. I forgave myself, and I was able to sort of move on. And then 10 through 12, I work on a lot. They're my maintenance steps, and I try to really live by the step 11, the prayer, the St. Francis prayer. I really tried to, comfort instead of being comforted, love instead of being loved, and all that sort of stuff. I literally read that, and then just before my meditation every morning. So that's sort of almost my mantra. And then I'm driving in the car or something, and someone cuts me off. I'm like, comfort, not comforted. Just and it works. If someone pushes in at the supermarket or does anything wrong, it's like it really, really works. It takes me out of myself. And then my life has completely changed. I mean, nothing's actually changed. I don't earn any more money. I live in exactly the same house. I got the same cat. I got the same car. But within me, everything has changed. The way that I respond to things has changed. The way that I communicate to people has changed. The way that I have relationships with my parents, my kids, I've been married 3 times, so that's how unmanageable my life is. 3.5 times actually. And I'm in great relationships with all of them, with all 3 of my exes, and they all, forgave me for everything, and so did the kids. And I feel like I'm finally the person that I was when I was like 15 or 16 and that I wanted to be, you know, and somehow or other I lost my way by drinking and, you know, becoming an arsehole and getting egotistical and selfish and these sort of things. And I'm finally sort of back on track, but it's a daily reprieve, and I know that. So I work my ass off on this program. I get up in the morning. I get up now at the same time I used to get home. So I'll regularly get home at daylight. You know, the birds flying in the morning, that was my, okay, well, time to go home. Now that's the time I get up, like 5:30, 6 o'clock. Hit the knees, do the meditation, you know, get that done for the first hour of the day, then, you know, go and exercise. And, you know, I go to a meeting every single day. I do, you know, I got a bunch of commitments and, you know, help a lot of guys out and do stuff outside of the program now and just try to be the best version of myself that I can actually be, which is not something that I was ever trying to do before. I was just trying to get the most, you know. They say, like, there was a meeting yesterday talking about into action. It's like, yeah, I was always into action, but I was in the wrong action. But now I'm definitely into action, and it's good actions. You know, I'm always looking, trying to find the next indicated action. I'm actually looking for it. And like to the extent where I like the butterflies, I go, oh, there he is, there's Rufus there. You know, I'm always sort of, you know, looking at these sort of things with the universe. And I don't know, I honestly have had a spiritual experience and a psychic change, and I freaking love AA on that. Hooray. Thanks. Yeah.
Wow, that was good. Now our main speaker will share his experience of strength and hope with us. Please join me in welcoming Anthony.
Thank you. My name is Anthony. I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank Chris for allowing me to come participate in my sobriety. I woke up this morning thinking, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to tell Chris that something came up and I can't do it? And then my second thought is, everybody's playing bingo. There's not going to be anybody here. And I show up and it's a little bit different. Anyways, my sobriety date is September 16th of 2013. My sponsor's name's Mike McAfee, and my home group is the Monday night traditional men's stag in Redondo Beach. For me, men's stags are important. No disrespect or pun intended, but I see mini skirts and high heels. I forget that we're supposed to stay sober. I forget I'm supposed to behave correctly. I forget that I'm supposed to be practicing principles. But anyways, I don't know about you guys, but that's just the way my brain works. So I grew up in the rough streets of Hermosa Beach. My mom was busy. She had 2 jobs. She was a bartender at night and a head waitress during the day. And my grandma and my grandpa pretty much raised me. And so I grew up 6 houses from the water on 10th Street, and, you know, it was a rough life. Thank God, almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, because I almost missed it. And, you know, so I found alcohol when I was probably 6th grade, Ascot and Gardena, with the older guys and the older girls. Boone's Farm, Strawberry Hill, and I got a little taste of that Boone's Farm, and I got a kiss from an older lady, and that feeling became more important for me than anything in this world. And, you know, but I lived with my grandmother. She was a saint. She didn't drink, she didn't smoke, she didn't cuss, so I had to act as if when I was at her house, and then when I left her house, I tried to get that same feeling as much as I could, you know. And when I was younger, you know, I went to the schools in Hermosa, and kind of smart, I guess. You know, I didn't really have to study. I could just take tests and make it by without really studying. But I was a pain in the ass. And now through working the steps and sponsorship, that was alcoholism way before I ever took a drink. So I'm a confirmed believer that I was born with this thing. It's not just something that activated. I came into the world a character defect, and then you know. So in 7th grade, I was at Hermosa Valley, and they decided, which I don't know how they did this, but they decided that the reason why I was such a pain in the butt is because I wasn't with kids my own age. So they allowed me to skip 8th grade, and they sent me to Redondo Union High School. Now here's this big, strong, athletic kid who could play sports and was good at sports, but I couldn't play sports because academically I wasn't there. Little did I know I was an alcoholic, and I was afraid of success and failure all in the same sentence. or it might have been different, right? You know, I'm looking at the bigger picture. I'm not looking at one step at a time. Get your grades together, play sports, everything will be fine, right? Well, I got 12 credits in high school, so that tells you how much that worked out for me. You know, I was hanging out at the Hermosa Pier at a very young age, you know, 15, 16. And the Hermosa Pier in the 80s wasn't really, it's more family orientated now, which is amazing, but in the 80s it wasn't a good place for a kid to be hanging out. And they used to tell me, Granny's coming, Anthony. And I'd tell my grandmother she'd come get me at 10 o'clock at a curfew. I'm like, even the girls stay out past 10, Grandma. She says, I don't care, you're coming home. And so I'd go home. But they were doing a lot of things down there. You know, they were partying. You know, first of all, I'm not a professional Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm just another bozo on the bus. You know, hopefully I carry the message, not the mess. I'm pretty sure you all know how to carry the mess. And welcome to the newcomers. You know, welcome to the biggest insane asylum in the world, ran by the inmates. And you know, for me, that's important though, because if it was ran by psychiatrists or psychologists or people that just went to school and now they're drug counselors, it's not going to work. You know, it's one alcoholic talking to another. You know, because I've had all of that other entities in my life and nothing was able to allow me to get sober. But an engineer, I sat down and told him my story, and my life changed. But anyways, so yeah, my high school career went down the drain. I never got to play sports, and I beat myself up for that for a lot of years because I really, really wanted to play football. I really, really wanted to play baseball because I did when I was younger. But I had this little monkey on my back, and I had no idea, you know. And we were freshmen in high school, and the only reason why I'm going to tell this story is because literally just somebody reminded me about it the other day. We were freshmen in high school, and my buddy Anthony Chopper, rest in peace, was dating this girl, Nani Pakuli, and she lives in Maui now, but she was house sitting, and it was right on 11th and Ardmore, Lori Ladd's parents' house, and party at Lori's, freshman in high school. And so we go to Lori's, we're partying. I'm the only one that can drive a stick shift. So I went down to the pier to pick up these little white pieces of paper that had little digital lines that you can rip and tear, if anybody knows what I'm talking about. And all the girls were snorting Nordos and drinking. And of course I go down to the pier to get that particular piece of paper and get a parking ticket, right? And so when the parents come home and the carpet's completely ruined by the toilet because they were throwing up because they couldn't, you know, the snorting Nodos is not really a politically correct thing for the body. Anyway, the carpet's ruined, the house is tore up. Guess who gets blamed? You know, they because I got the parking ticket and I was the one driving the car. And then a lady there that was friends with us didn't know how to drive a stick shift and she burned the clutch. Anyway, that was my first, I guess, demoralized, just feeling like a turd, you know, looking at when Lori's mom came to the house. How they're still friends with me today, I have no idea, but Lori's mom came to the house and told my grandma what I had done and that I had to pay for the parking ticket. And the look on my grandma's face was, I mean, my grandma didn't drink, she didn't smoke, she didn't cuss. If she said crap, you better run because she's picking something up. And I did, you know, because that woman was, she used to tell me, don't think you're smart, kid, because the flies in Texas are bigger than you. And anyway, so, you know, that was my first, but then, you know, it lasted for a second, and then it wasn't really that bad. You know, it wasn't that big of a deal. And I thought, well, okay, whatever, no big deal, right? And she'd take me to school, and she'd take me to the front on Diamond, and I'd go out the back door. I'd get my buddies and say, you know, school's not fun. I mean, we didn't really go to school. We were on continuation on campus at that time. Finally, they threw me out of Redondo, and I ended up at Pacific Shores, right behind Maricosta. And if anybody's been to Pacific Shores, we had a huge swamp. We used to smoke weed and do whatever we wanted to. And anyways, I never got my education. I turned 18, you know, and it was fun. I'm not going to lie to you. Partying in high school was fun. There was a lot of kegers. There was a lot of red cups. There was a lot of, 4th of July down at the beach was insane. The Pennywise shows, the punk rock shows. I mean, we traveled all over Orange County, Hollywood, the Troubadour, somehow I was always end up fighting or in trouble, you know, and I think it was, you know, I felt like I was the door host, but it's because I didn't get to play sports, you know, and I was hanging out with older guys, so I had to learn how to defend myself or I was going to be defended, and I learned how to do it really well, and it got me in a lot of trouble, but that's another story. And then, I was 22. Meanwhile, my mom, my dad wasn't around when I was a kid because my mom had married some guy, and she asked my dad if it was okay that I got adopted. And come to find out years later, my mom and my dad broke up because their drug habit was so gnarly that they just couldn't deal with each other. But my mom never said anything bad about him. She never told me any of that stuff until I was already making interesting decisions myself. But and now he's a big part of my life, and he's a good man, and it's a good relationship. But anyways, needless to say, my mom she worked a lot of hours. Sometimes she'd come pick me up and take me home for a couple of hours and then take me to school, pick me up on Fridays, take me to Disneyland. One of my best friend's parents used to own the Sea Sprite Motel, and she picked me and him up from school, and that poor bastard had to wait. When I was going to North School, I don't know if Dr. Pollock, she was a drill sergeant in the Army, and I wouldn't keep my mouth shut or stay in my seat. She took my whole desk and put it in the walk-in closet and said, when you're done with your homework, you can come out of the closet. And DJ had to wait after school for me to come out and go walk home with him. And I just tell that little silly story because that's, I was irritable and discontented way before I ever took a drink. And just, and then when I was 21, so I always had people like construction jobs, worked at Sharky's. I mean, I had always good opportunities, and I'd like to sit here and tell you that I lost a lot of good opportunities, but the fact of the matter is I know today that if it got in the way of my drinking and using, I just set it aside. And when I was 21, a young lady took me serious, and of course she didn't like her parents, so she moved in with me and my grandmother, which was an amazing idea. My grandma was super stoked, and she ended up getting pregnant. And I was making bad decisions, let's just put it that way. And some serious stuff had happened, and she was pregnant. I left to go get some milk and some bread. And 4 years, 11 months later is when I came home from that situation. But anyways, so that kid's now 26 years old. But at the time, she got pregnant, she took me serious, but in the beginning, I was really all about it. I got a job working construction with this guy, Jeff Fredericks. As a matter of fact, I just ran into him yesterday. It's amazing to see him because he's a huge part of the beginning years of molding the man that I became later. But he gave me a job. This man started out by writing license plate numbers down because my mom went to prison. She was in prison. I was staying in the apartment upstairs in the back of my grandma's house, and we were distributing stuff we shouldn't have been distributing. Anyways, he had a little girl that he was raising, and he didn't want all these people coming down his neighborhood, so he was writing down my license plate number. I come out of the house like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? He goes, you know exactly why I'm doing that. And then later on become a really good friend of mine and giving me a job and trying to help me to do the right thing, And needless to say, I had no idea that bad decision was going to change my life for the next, I don't know, I was 22. I got sober when I was 39. I got introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous when I was 15 years old because I got caught with a little bit of weed at Pacific Shores. And I walked into the rooms and I seen a bunch of old people and I thought, well, no, this isn't for me. And I realized that my penmanship was just as good as yours. So I grabbed a bunch of colored pens and I wrote the signatures and I turned it into the judge and I got away with it. And I was like, perfect. Not perfect. Come to the meetings, get the signatures, listen to what they tell you. It's important. Because it did a whole lot of nothing for me except for cause a lot more pain, a lot more agony. If you're new and you're sitting in these rooms, it doesn't matter what floor of the elevator you get off, it's what you do to stay off. You don't have to take it to the basement. If you've never been to prison, that's good. You don't have to go to prison. I went for you. Showering with men is overrated, believe me. But unfortunately, because I was young and dumb and I thought that that's what a man did, it became a big, huge part of my life and I didn't think that it was going to change, and so I would go to the gated community and get all healthy and well and think that I was going to come home and just change the way that I was living my life. And I would come right back to the South Bay, you know what I mean? And my mom was in the mix. She was drinking and using, so I'd come to the house with good intentions, and I would see her, I'd see my friends, and I'd go right back to doing what I was doing. And in 2008, I was dating a dancer, and the spiritual word for stripper. But she's an amazing lady. We're good friends today. She's in medical now. But anyway, and I thought that I loved her. I thought I wanted to be with her or whatever. And I chased her into the rooms. And, that's when the seed got planted. I was working for a dude by the name of Kurt Pageant. And I wasn't employable, but he was employing me. And I was seeing that the program Alcoholics Anonymous working in him. And it started to look attractive to me, and so then in 2013, when my finally, at the end, 2013, my mom and my grandmother finally just, my mom got sober first, and she joined Al-Anon because she didn't know what to do with her crazy son, and so she had to set healthy boundaries, but at the time, they served a restraining order against me, and told me that I was no longer allowed on the property. And at the time, I thought my mom was a snitch. She's a rat. She's doing this. She's doing that. And the reality of it is she was protecting her and my grandmother and setting a healthy boundary and not enabling me. So now I realize that it's the best decision that lady ever made. And God, it's hot in here. Sweating like a snitch in a gangster party. But anyway, so I went to, what happened, I was in 2013, I had some pretty serious medical situations. Here's this strong athletic kid with a lot of potential that is now dying internally from alcoholism, but I couldn't articulate that to you. I wouldn't have been able to tell you that I'm an alcoholic and this is my problem. I'm supposed to be, my grandfather told me as a young kid, don't express your feelings, don't show them, just push through them and do what you need to do. So I didn't know that I had to ask people, hey, how do you help me? How do I get out of this? And so in January of 13, I was in a coma for 5 days. And the only reason why I share this with you is because it's my story, first of all. Second of all, I don't only have alcoholism, I have morism. Selective amnesia is the biggest one because my life is completely different than what it was when I got here. So I have to remind myself the dirtbag that walked through those doors so that I don't ever go back to that situation. You know what I mean? Because it's critical. You stop going to meetings, you forget who you are. And guess what happens? I've buried a lot of people. They just pushed my homeboy out on the curb. And he died alone on a dolly in Long Beach because they were afraid the house was going to get hot, smoking fentanyl. And this guy actually told on my mom. She went to prison, and I couldn't stand him. But now that he's gone, I reached out to his mom, and she said, you of all people are the one that's got my back. Isn't that amazing? And that's the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because what kind of program am I working if I'm trying to give somebody, a false sense of reality? But anyways, the disease is real. It's no joke. It's not, but there's graveyards and prisons. And another thing, too, if you don't identify with the prison thing, I get it. You know what I mean? But there's not any one of us in this room can leave this parking lot tonight and go to the liquor store and buy a pint of whatever and run into somebody and kill them. And guess what? You now, too, have been to jail. So take it serious. I'm glad that I don't have to live my life like that anymore. But so in 2013, I had two pretty significant hospital trips. The first one was in January. I was in a coma for 5 days. Woke up out of the coma. Never thought that, I called my mom, and at that time, her sponsor. They came to see me at Harbor General. Didn't blink an eye. Didn't think I was going to have to change anything. Shit, it was bad luck. Left the hospital. My poor grandmother at the time was obviously older and Cops are calling her, finding out where I'm at, what's going on. He wasn't supposed to leave the hospital against medical advice, all this crazy stuff, whatever, right? No big deal. I ain't hurting nobody. I'm just hurting myself. Nobody gives a crap about what's happening to me, right? And then 6 months later, I'm in the hospital again. This time I was there for 9 weeks. And of course, in the hospital, I'm still doing what I'm not supposed to be doing. I mean, they're giving me other medication, so I'm taking my medication, and on my deathbed, literally on my deathbed, they told my mom if I made it, I'd never walk again. And this is real. I'm not telling this to like, and I got out of that hospital and a little over $1 million hospital bill, but that it doesn't matter, and luckily, when I was in the hospital in January, the Torrance PD didn't file on me because they thought that I was gonna die. And that charge got re-brought up, which saved my life, because they sent me with a bunch of pills and different opiates and said, wing yourself off of these, knowing that I was there for that exact same thing. So I got out of the hospital August 8th. August 12th, I got escorted in the back of Torrance Court. August 13th, I got escorted in the back of Torrance Court one more time. This time my family had a restraining order against me. My grandma had a restraining order against me. Nobody I grew up with wanted anything to do with me. And why that day? Well, it wasn't that day. I was going to go back to jail, but whatever. On September 16th, they told me to come back to court. When I came back to court, they, for whatever reason, gave me a break. They told me that I was going to go to a program. I was going to do 6 months to go to the program, and then I had a probation. And for whatever reason, when I walked into the courtroom this time, I had already surrendered that this was just going to be my life, that nothing else was going to be my life. You guys were going to have wonderful kids and families and jobs and all that stuff, and I was either going to die in the gated community or in the curb somewhere. And luckily, that's not real. Thank God for good sponsorship and the 12 steps. But when I walked into the courtroom, something shifted. I knew that I needed to do something different. I wasn't, I was dying from this disease. And so I went back to the jail. I did my jail time. I went to the program, and I've been to other programs. I've been to a lot of different facilities. All my adult life, I pretty much lived like a caged animal or strung out like a research mouse. And so I ended up going to this program, but this time it was different. I participated. I sat in the front row. I still sat in the front row today because I need no distractions. I can distract myself without any help. And so I started sitting in the front row. I started listening to the people that were coming up or talking or whatever. And it was in Acton out by Lancaster. And some guys came up on a panel, and I was sitting in the front row, and there's four. Anyways, they said they were from Hermosa Beach, and I was like, yes. And they have a lot of time, a lot of sobriety. Anyways, I did everything that I was supposed to do at that program, and that's not my MO. My grandma used to always tell me when I was a kid that I didn't think the rules apply to me and I'm going to end up in jail. And I was telling her, yeah, right, no way, it's not going to happen. Then I'm sitting in jail going, God, she was really, really intelligent. How did she know? And so most of my life, I didn't think the rules apply to me. I always wanted to join karate, and I wanted to be a black belt. I cut every corner possible. I wanted always the easy way. You give me the the Catcher in the Rye book in high school. I get the Cliff Notes because I'm slick, and I'm going to do the book report. You know what I mean? Little did I know I'm cheating myself this whole time. And so I came home from that program in January of 2014, and I called a friend of mine, Brent Mayhew, who works he was at the Beacon House. He was working recently at Claire Foundation, but now he's going back to school to get his master's to be a social worker, which blows me away. But this is one of the guys that I chased at that Hermosa Pier growing up, getting loaded together. And then he got sober. And so he's been a huge part of my sobriety, a huge part of turning my whole aspect around, being in a sober living and guy's on parole, and he's telling me that I'm dirty on drugs. I'm calling Brent, this guy's a snitch, and Brent's like, dude, no, you're in a sanctuary, says it right on the front of the podium, and people are trying to stay sober and stay safe, and you're running around like a knucklehead. Like, you gotta go. Who am I talking to? Anyway, so I called him because I was literally nervous. I was coming home from this program, and I really wanted to stay sober, and I really wanted to do the right thing, but I didn't know if I could, and I didn't know if I could come to where I grew up. And Brent goes, look, bro, keep it simple, stupid, first of all. Second of all, he's like, I can put you on a plane and send you to Hawaii, or I can send you to Tahiti. The problem is you're going to go to the methadone clinic and you're going to find your people and you're going to get high regardless of where you're at. So why not do it where you grew up, where the roots are, where the people that love you, that know you since you were a kid are going to take care of you regardless of the situation. And for some reason, I think because I had been already participating and doing what I was supposed to do, a light came on. And I realized that I could do it anywhere I needed to go, and I came home from that program and I went to the Thursday night men's stag at the Hermosa Lana Club and sat down. I was 280 pounds, big head, baggy dickies, AAA t-shirts. I didn't get mad. I was mad and a little irritable. Couldn't sit still in my seat. And an older gentleman walked up to me and shook my hand and he said his name. And that's my sponsor today. And but I can tell you exactly what institution I was in and what cell number I was in when his son lost his life to this disease. And how does that happen? How's the first person I meet in Alcoholics Anonymous is a guy that I grew up with and known him my whole. I always heard about Mike. I just never used to call him the Nazi. I never met him. And the first person I meet in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous is him. And so we started talking and we started communicating, and honest to God, he really didn't want nothing to do with me. He didn't know what to do. He was just trying to point me in this direction, point me in that direction, and I was like, I already knew that I needed somebody with a couple decades of sobriety because, I'm coming up on 10 years and I could still come up with some pretty interesting ideas, and he'll, whoa, hold on, that don't even sound right. We're going to do it like this, like you lost your mind, right? But at the time, because of my background and because of what I've done and where I've been, he just didn't know how to handle that, He's never been to prison. He's never done drugs. He's just an alcoholic. He was a very successful member of society. But for me, that was important because I can get one of the homeboys that's been sober 20 years, but because he's been in my same position, he'll co-sign my BS and not even know it. And I need my character defects to stand out like a glowing sign so he can help me correct them, right? And so anyway, he told me he would temporarily sponsor me. My family still had a restraining order against me. I still had nowhere to go. I was living, my godson's dad, he's still on the circuit. If you don't know what that means, he's still smoking meth. But I felt like I was there protecting the kids. And so I'd sleep on the couch and I'd go to the docks. I'd shower at the docks and I'd go to a meeting, go meet up with my sponsor. And then that kind of went away. I was living on a boat. Then I was living in my buddy's architect office on Cypress and 8th and Hermosa, and oh my God, 3 in the morning, everybody from Sharky's would end up there. They're waking me up. Did you steal my purse? I'm like, oh my God, dude, like, what am I doing? But that's the life that I'd built for myself, and I'd already had a level of acceptance to realize that it's just where I'm at. That's what I was doing, and but the thing that I did the most is, I try to go through the steps as quick as I could because I'd done everything else in my life. Everything. I just wouldn't die. I was like a cockroach. And I wouldn't, man. Overdoses and, it's just insanity. I don't need to glorify the behavior. But, so we started reading the big book, and I'm grateful for first of all, he was semi-retired, so it was huge. I had nowhere else to go. So we got into the book and we started reading the big book, and I'm glad that the way that I've been living my life and the people that were in my life cut me loose, because then I started hearing the music and I started seeing the books just started. If I would have been high, I would have for sure thought somebody was following me, and it just started jumping out at me. You know what I mean? And so we started reading the book. We started getting into the steps, and for me, because first of all, my grandpa was pretty hardcore. My grandpa died when I was 15 from cirrhosis of the liver. He drank Thunderbird to the day he died, and that was my hero. And I couldn't even go see him in the hospital. And I used to just see him with the brown bag everywhere, you know what I mean? And I didn't really think nothing of it, he just drank. That's what he did. And then my uncle died when I was 30, and my mom was in recovery as well, and so seeing my mom get into recovery and seeing people that I grew up with in recovery helped me out a lot. helped me realize that, maybe I could do it too. And the praying thing, a gentleman that had a bunch of tattoos and been where I'd been was on the floor praying, and I'm looking at him like, what are you doing, dude? Like, what if somebody sees you, you know what I mean? Like, and he's like, man, I don't know where they go, I just know they work. And I'm like, phew, I can accept that, and but anyway, so Mike, sat down with me, and thank God for him. He didn't tell me that I was surrendering. He didn't tell me that you're doing this, you're doing that. He asked me a series of questions. And so I answered the questions, and he kind of shared his experience with me, and little did I know I was working the first step. And again, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Thank God, because if I would have known, I probably would have hit the brakes and ran the other way. Be careful what you wish for in Alcoholics Anonymous. So we got into the steps, and I too was a big, I went to church literally they were having a meeting there a little while for the COVID on right next to the Alano Club. When I was a little kid, we used to go over there and play Red Rover and go to Hope Chapel, and, find the girls. With this, obviously, we're going to church for the wrong reasons, but, they told me that if you did certain things, you were going to go to hell. If you did this, you were going to go to hell. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going in the Space Coaster, so I don't need nothing to do with the church. Like, I'm out of here. So I just never looked back at that particular situation. And then I've seen a lot of interesting people in my life hide behind the Bible and then go back to doing what they're doing. So I'm like, it just put a foul taste in my mouth. And then if I can't touch it, I can't see it, I can't feel it, how am I supposed to believe it? And I'm a knucklehead. I'll step in dog shit once, I'll step in dog shit twice, and then I'll step in it barefooted just to make sure that's what I stepped in. And that's just the way I roll, I apologize, but and come to find out, that's my alcoholism, So I had a huge problem with the God thing, but luckily Mike, broke it down to me. The second step. He's like, if you think it can work for me or it can work for other people in your life, then you're in. Then it could probably work for you. And I'm like, really? Is it that easy? That simple? And sure enough, I've seen other people that I knew. I've seen my mom, and I've seen their lives, and I've seen the smiles, and I've seen the lives that they were living, which there's just no way that was going to be for me. I mean, when I got here, the state of California considered me a career criminal, and that was just the way my life was going to be. And I'm not saying that for bragging rights. I'm saying that because now today I'm a tax-paying citizen, and it might not be a big deal to you, but it's huge to me. State of California paid a lot of money to babysit me, and now they, it's different. And then the second, the third step is made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. And I told my sponsor, I'm like, so bro, if you make a decision to cross the street, do you cross the street? And I was like, all right. But then he wanted me to hold his hand and kneel down and do the third step prayer. And I'm like, what does this have to do with staying sober? Like, I want to stay sober and I want to stay out of prison. That's it. That's all I want. And I don't know that holding your hand and kneeling down in your study in Manhattan Beach has anything to do with any of that. You know what I mean? And he just looked at me with that stubborn look. Mind you, we'd started to build a relationship, and he started to get comfortable with me because he literally wanted nothing to do with me when I first got here. Scott Canales wouldn't even sit next to me anyway. But now we have this bond and this relationship, so he started breaking me down a little bit. And so heck it, you know what I mean? I ain't got nothing to lose. Let's do this third step prayer. And I did that third step prayer, and wow. Profound alteration in my reaction to life. That's what it says, the spiritual experiences in the back of the big book. And, I knelt down with that man, and I did that third step prayer, and I get to go home, and I get to sit there and meditate for a little while and think about what had just happened, and changed my life. Never in my life did I think about using the crosswalk. Always going to jaywalk. It's illegal. It's adult-sized Frogger. There's adrenaline involved. Like, it's just the way I'm going to do it. Why am I going to walk over 5 feet, push a button, and wait for the light to turn green? And when I left that man's house, I realized that I needed to use the crosswalk. I needed to wear my seatbelt. At the time, I still had Chevrolets. I had no vehicle. Bus system, Chevrolets, sober living. And of course, I got kicked out of the sober living because I still had jailhouse mentality. As a matter of fact, I met somebody in the back seat in the meeting tonight at one of the sober livings that I had to get out of because they had creepy creatures living in the mattresses. But anyway. And then, So yeah, I left that man's house, and that was my first shift in perception. I realized that I was walking down a street, and instead of cutting across the person's grass, I used the sidewalk. I thought, man, that's not right of me to cross in that person's lawn and my brain does not work that way. And I realized that, holy mackerel, there's something and there's another purpose. Why isn't all of a sudden, just out of just doing this little prayer, my whole situation, I had a profound outlook on life, and and then step 4, of course, there was some things when I got here. I remember sitting at the club in the front room by the bar, talking to one of my friends that I grew up with, he's not in the program no more. He's drinking and using big time. I told him, man, there's just no way. There's just certain things that I can't change. That's who I am. That's my identity. I have this image and this person that I'm supposed to be. Like, I just can't change that stuff, and there's just no way it's going to happen. And there's some things that I just can't tell you guys. It's just not. I know what happens when people that say things like that. It just doesn't work out. You know what I mean? And but little did I know I had the willingness to say those things and sit down with that man. And I did that step 4, and another perception. You start writing stuff on paper, that stuff starts jumping out at you. And looking at the way that I've been living my life and the way I've been conducting my life, I couldn't wait to sit down with that man and tell that man my deepest, darkest secrets. We did the step 5, and I thought for sure fireworks were going to go off, the policemen were going to be there, or something was going to happen. And he looked at me and he said, "Are you done yet?" He had a little bit of a disgusted look on his face, I ain't going to lie. But he said, "Are you done yet? And is there anything that you left out?" And I said, "No, that's it," And we went on to the next steps, in 6 and 7, they call it the flyover steps, but it's a big deal, Like I told you, I came into the world of character defect, and over the years in the places I've been, I definitely had a lot of bad behavior and bad situations, and, then it's step 9, and between that, we're writing my list, and I'd come to the Lano Club, and I was wearing a Sharky's hat, and I walk into the club, and I go into the meeting, and he goes, "Get over here." I walk out, it pulls me into the bar. I'm like, "What?" He had kind of a little bit of an attitude, and I go, "What?" And he goes, "Man, look around the room. Who do you see in this room that has a full head of hair, that's a decent-looking guy with a hat down around his eyes like a 20-year-old gangster?" And I took the hat off, and I threw it in the trash. And he goes, "What are you throwing it in the trash for?" I said, "Well, to me, it's like snorting vitamins. It's pointless. If I can't wear it, what am I going to own it for?" And he goes, "God, you got such a weird sense of humor." That was 2014. I haven't worn a hat since. And for me, I don't wear a hat because I'm an Angels fan or a Dodgers fan or you know what I mean? I wear a hat for the wrong reasons. And if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And I had to change everything. And I showed up to his house in the tree section of Manhattan Beach in those baggy clothes, and he handed me an envelope. And I'm like, "What is in the envelope? $300. I'm like, "What is this money for?" He goes, "Well, the gang attire doesn't match your attitude and the way that you're acting in the world. And not only that, it doesn't look good coming into my tree," because he lived in the tree section of Manhattan Beach. He said, "I don't know if the neighbors are too cool with you walking into my house." He's all, "Buy some clothes that fit you." And I'm like, so it was awkward at first, but now it's amazing. So slowly but surely, this man started breaking me down and changing the person that I am. And in 2000, we went through meat and potatoes is a 9. The amends process is first of all, the stripper one, I wanted her to be at the top of the list for obvious reasons. And my sponsor had to check my motives. She never made the list, but her parents made the list, which is amazing. Your sponsor's got to check your motives and see why you're making that amends or who you're making that amends to. I just say that just to be funny, but the reality of it is you can mess it up. There's no reason to cause more damage. I made an amends to the Hermosa Beach Police Department. I couldn't figure out why. Why am I apologizing to them? They made my life miserable, but the reality of it is I got in a little altercation with a few of them in my grandma's living room in 98, and I apologized to them for that behavior. And then I also, for some weird reason, when I'm writing the letter, said, "Hey, I want to appreciate you guys for all the years of trying to make me be a better citizen." Where did that come from? And I take it to the police department. I turn it into the police department, and she goes, "What are you doing here?" And the meter maid goes by my mom's house. We lived in Hermosa my whole life. My grandma's been there since 1952, so there isn't anybody that we don't know in that 1 mile by 1 mile town. And my mom calls me and said, "Hey, son, what? Did you write a letter to the police department?" "No, why?" What are you talking about? I wouldn't do that. Like, of course, that's me and her relationship, you know what I mean? And she said, well, the meter maid came by here and said he's seen a letter from you on the captain's desk. And I was like, well, maybe I did. I had no idea what that was going to do for me. You know, those guys wouldn't come anywhere near. I didn't play nice in the sandbox. It didn't matter who you are. I just thought that's what I was supposed to do. And they wouldn't come anywhere near me unless they had the guns drawn or back up. And one of the ones that hated me the worst walked up to me in Chipotle on PCH and Pier Avenue in uniform and shook my hand and gave me a hug. Aww. And I didn't know that was going to be important to me. You know, I had no clue that being friends with a police officer was going to, you know what I mean? I played cops and robbers most of my life. Like, it wasn't anywhere near in my plans, you know? And by writing that letter and doing that, you know, a lot of them, I see them all the time, you know? One of them, John Sybil, I mean, he threatened to shoot me when I tried to run from him at my grandma's house. I just seen him at the doctor's office. I had my little 2-year-old with me and had a normal conversation, you know. And but the biggest one of them all is the guy that came into the program, you know. We had assaults, high-speed chases, you name it, we had it. It's real. I'm not saying it to be cool. That's just the way that I live my life. And he came into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous struggling. And I could only imagine he worked for the city of Hermosa for a long time, being at a meeting in Redondo Beach and being who he was, like, oh my God. I told him, hey, don't worry about none of that. I'd already been through the steps. I already had a profound shift in my behavior. I shook his hand. I gave him a hug. And I said, bro, you know my story. You know where I come from. This thing works. It will help you. And at the time, he thought that I was stronger than him, so his ego took him back out. And just so happens, when he came back, I was standing in front of the Alano Club. And he walked up to me, and I gave him a hug. And guy's a good friend of mine today. You know, we've been diving together. He showed me his gun case, which made me a little nervous. But went to his house. You know, 50th birthday. It's nothing but police officers. Half of them know me. It was a little interesting, but. A relationship that, honest to God, if you would have told me 10 years ago that I would have wanted, I would have told you to change your medication. You are definitely sniffing something wrong. And it's one of the most important ones for me today. You know, in 2015, my grandmother got sick with cancer. And, you know, this is one of the things that I thought for sure, if something happened to that lady, no matter where I was at, what I was doing from the time I was in kindergarten till I was 40 years old, she suited up, she showed up, took the wires out of her bra so she could come see me in prison, disrespected her. Never did she judge me, never did she shun me. She always supported me, you know, Anthony, you know, and, you know, she got sick with cancer and she told me, Anthony, you know, she said, I got cancer. This is what's going on. You know, there's nothing in my life that I haven't done that I'm not proud of. There's nothing that I want to do. I miss your grandfather, you know, and most of this all is, you know, I can leave the world in peace knowing my boy's going to be okay. She's like, I never thought in the world that you were going to beat this thing. I thought for sure they were going to call me and tell me that you were dead or you were never coming home. And that's a gift that I had no idea that if I got a sponsor and worked the steps and went and did this thing the way that I was supposed to, that was going to take place, because I always wanted to, I mean, always had good intentions, always wanted to show that woman that she raised me to be who she raised me to be, and I just couldn't do it. I could not hold that commitment, you know, and I almost killed myself trying to hold that commitment. And, you know, just recently, you know, I also too, you know, in this process, I didn't date in the first year, 2 years, and then all of a sudden it's 3 years, and I'm looking in the mirror going, is there something wrong with me? Like, what's going on here? You know, my sponsor's like, you always had a girl, you always had a car. What did it do for you? Nothing. You're an emotional wreck. You're living on a couch. What do you have to offer a female? Not to mention, you're going to get in a relationship, you're not going to be able to practice the steps, you know, and I'm so grateful I did that. You know, because when I was 3 years sober, I was at a bar, watching my buddy's band play, a bar that I was 86 from for life before I got sober. Hermosa Saloon. They told me that I could never come back because of an incident that happened there with a military guy. Anyway, technically it wasn't my fault, but his injuries were my fault. And so they let me back when I got sober. I actually I was bouncing there for a little while when I first got sober. An old timer told me that's not a good idea. And now I understand why. Lady shows up. Anyways, a friend of mine flirted with her a little bit. She left. She's my wife today. You know, we have, I got a 26-year-old kid that I told you about that I haven't raised. I try to be in his life. He's still butthurt. I made my amends to him. But the problem is he respects people that respect me for the wrong reasons. He likes to drink. He likes to take Xanax. You know, he likes to badmouth and thinks it's okay. But, you know, today I got to set healthy boundaries and, you know, it's not okay for him. But with that being said, Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps give me an opportunity to do what I didn't do the first time. I got an almost 3-year-old. And I got an 11-month-old, you know. And at first, when my wife got pregnant, I wanted to get pregnant. I'm like, oh my God, like, no, I didn't. I don't want that responsibility. That's what I wanted to say. What I said was, I married you to deserve to be a mother. I'm not going to take that from you. And it's one of the best decisions I ever made. On the 26th of last month, the lady that brought me into this world, the lady that got sober before I got sober, been fighting cancer for 3 years. My mother, you know, and it was a rough relationship. That woman was, you know, I don't know if it's because she thought she wanted to protect me or she needed to protect me. She wouldn't let me help her, and we'd butt heads, or I'd tell her something, she'd do the exact opposite to basically just go like that, you know what I mean? So it was just gnarly. She was gnarly to my wife. But anyways, she went in for a procedure on Thursday. Friday, it just took a left turn. Monday, I had to make the decision to get her comfortable and start introducing Ativan and fentanyl and I sat there for 10 hours until she took her last breath. And of course, DJ, my buddy that his family used to own the Sea Sprite, was there with me. My wife was with me. Another wonderful lady that my mom had staying with her was with her. And not when my mom was taking her, well, she was there. But anyway, and I stepped away for 2 seconds to talk to my buddy, and she took her last breath. And somebody else in the room was there with me, thank God, from the program, because I probably would have went batshit crazy. But I said, Mom, you turd. You took your last breath after I let go of your hand. But besides getting sober, and that was probably one of the hardest decisions I ever made, you know, to tell the doctors that, hey, let's get her comfortable and let's help her transition. You know, my life today is absolutely amazing. I have an amazing career. I work in the oil industry. I have a brand new truck sitting in the driveway. I got a Harley, I got a boat, I got all this wonderful stuff in my life. But the difference today is it's not who I am. It's not my identity. Once upon a time, that's who I thought I was, all my stuff. Today, it's just what I get for showing up to Alcoholics Anonymous, to taking care of my responsibilities and going to work and supporting my family. And I never thought that was going to happen. You know, I always thought that, you know, it just doesn't happen for people that made decisions like me. But if you're new, you know, this thing doesn't work by osmosis. My experience, and I've never heard anybody say I went to too many meetings, I had too many sponsees, and I was so spiritually fit that I decided to get loaded. What happens is they stop going to meetings, they stop doing what they were supposed to do, they forget who they are, and they get loaded, and most of them don't come back. So if you're new, give yourself a chance. Work the steps, get a sponsor, and if your life doesn't change, you can always go back to doing what you're doing. So thanks.
Mm.